Hey y'all, it's Ashley at Bookishrum and I'm back with another video. So today I am here to do a video that is focused on the top 10 most intimidating books on my bookshelves. So this video came about because, as I said in another video, every month I put up a poll on my Patreon and patrons can vote on which video they would like to see me do within that month, and this month this was the video that ended up winning. So this video is going to include a variety of books. I know that when we say intimidating, we automatically think length, and that is not necessarily true for all these titles. It is true of some of them that the length is rather intimidating, but there are other factors that have made them intimidating to me. Have some of them been started? Yes, I am deep into some of these, but they still hold a level of intimidation, which is why I have found that I have not been able to continue. So let's go ahead and jump right in and get to this list. So the first one that I have on here is New Sun's original speculative fiction by people of color, and this is edited by Nisi Shawl. And this one is one that I was actually gifted and I'm super excited to read it. However, I have just been really truly getting into speculative fiction, and while I'm okay with the more fantastical elements, I struggle a little bit with sci-fi. So science fiction has never really been my strongest suit. I have not really read a lot in science fiction, and I know that this contains some aspects of science fiction. I recently read Escaping Exodus, which I did end up enjoying, but that was my first really heavy deep dive into science fiction. So while I'm excited, I think as a whole I'm still sort of intimidated by it, but I think that this is going to end up being really good. The next one that I have on this list is The Lady of the Rivers by Philippa Gregory, which is interesting because I just featured this book in a different video. And the reason why I have found this to be intimidating, as you can see I've already started it, is the density of these books. They are rich in history, a lot of historical elements to it. As I've always said, Philippa Gregory is not always the most historically accurate individual, but she does lace her books with a lot of history, and this book is part of the Plantagenet and Tudor Dynasty series, which is not only a lot of books but also thick books and books that are rich in history, and sometimes that aspect of it can be kind of hard to get into it. And this series is kind of weird in some sense because there are some fantastical elements, but I don't really want to say so much because I think it may spoil it. But it is harder to read because they end up being so dense. So it does intimidate me. I did set a goal to finish this one before the end of the year. I don't know how I'm going to pace myself for the rest of the series, but I do know that this is one that I do need to get to very, very soon. The next thing that I have is actually a group of books, and these I'm all holding up. These are not necessarily like these volumes per se, but I'm just holding up these DC Rebirth volumes that I personally own, because y'all, comics are one of my favorite just genres of literature. And I think that, of course, when you're looking at the top publishing industries within comics, you're always looking at like DC, Marvel. I know Image is up there. I won't get into all of that stuff, but what I will say is that DC has an extensive history that goes all the way back to the 1930s. So this is not just representative also of just the Rebirth line, because there's so many comics in the Rebirth line. This is representative of me trying to get through as much DC content as possible, knowing that there are thousands and thousands and thousands of backlogs of issues that I'm never going to be able to touch. And it is intimidating, even as an avid comic book reader. Getting into the nitty-gritty of a lot of the historical aspects of these big comic book industries and publishers is intimidating because it's so much material, and I've had to do so much extensive reading and research outside of the actual material, just trying to figure out where to start. So I know that a lot of times people can tell you like you can always start with DC with their reboots, and their latest reboot of the entire line has been the Rebirth line. However, I do find that I'm also interested in stuff that has been covered in the past. I like seeing how characters have developed, especially like some of my favorite characters like Wonder Woman, how like she's developed from the 30s up until now, and how different artists, including just writers and illustrators and people who do the coloring, the inking and stuff, like how she has progressed as a character through time. I think that I like to see stuff like that, but in order to see stuff like that, you have to go through so much of a backlog of history that it can be intimidating. So while I have enjoyed a lot of what I've read in DC, and I'm a big comic book person, I will say that attempting to navigate my way through this material is a very intimidating process. The next one that I have here is Monday's Not Coming by Tiffany D. Jackson. And I know this may seem a little strange to have this book on this list. Let me explain. So I read Grown this year and absolutely loved it. And I constantly get comments about I need to read Monday's Not Coming and that people have absolutely loved it and they think that I will absolutely enjoy it. And I don't think that I won't enjoy it. But this is intimidating to me because I think that the material that's going to be covered is going to affect me personally, and that is very, very intimidating. I have heard greatly how this emotionally impacts people, and just by reading the synopsis of the book, I kind of get a feel for what it's going to touch on, and I am super nervous to read it. I know that I'm going to need to be in the right emotional capacity to be able to handle this book. And I don't know when that's going to be, which is why I just have not picked it up. And I haven't really said why I haven't picked it up yet, but just knowing the personal effect that this probably is going to have, I'm going to need to make sure that I am absolutely ready for it. Okay, so for the next books, I'm actually kind of cheating for 2 slots because these 2 books are by the same author, but I have different reasons for why I think that they are intimidating. So the first one that I have here is A Brief History of 7 Killings by Marlon James. I actually did start reading this one. As you can see, I still have my bookmark in. I got about 300 pages in this, and I was reading this kind of hybrid. I was reading this both as an audiobook and a physical copy, and it is intense, and it is dense, and it is a writing style that I found that I really definitely needed to get adjusted to. It is good. I think that the whole concept of this kind of looking at some facts around the Bob Marley assassination attempt and looking at it from different perspectives and different things, I think it is greatly done. I think this is worth reading as a blended experience, but it is intimidating. I did not really start stepping into literary fiction until a few years ago, and I think at that point when I was first stepping into literary fiction, I picked this up, and I don't think that was necessarily a smart move for me to do, but this is one that I think I will enjoy, but I just need to make the initiative to revisit it. The next one that I have is Black Leopard Red Wolf by Marlon James, and the reason why this one is intimidating to me is because I've heard such mixed reviews about it. I know some people who really, really enjoy it and some people who really, really don't enjoy it. I also know that this has a lot of trigger warnings from like the very beginning. Like Marlon James does not hold back from a lot of aspects of this book that can be triggering for some people. I think that this is more of like a literary fantasy, because I know that at first it was being labeled as like a black Game of Thrones, but I think that people have said that it's not like that, that it has more literary fantastical elements to it. And I have not had issues with literary fantasy, but it is not my go-to genre. I am very hardcore like fantasy, not like contemporary fantasy or literary fantasy or stuff that just has like fantastical elements about it. So that's why this is intimidating. I think a lot of it has to do with the mixed feelings about it and the fact that I heard that it is gory. So I will pick this up. I am excited to pick this up, just like I'm excited to pick up A Brief History of 7 Killings. I'm excited to read all of these actually. It's just that they do make me nervous. They do intimidate me. Speaking of fantasy books, I actually have 2 fantasy books here that I am supposed to be reading, but life has gotten in the way. One of them I was supposed to read this month, and the other one I got a copy of this, I think, for like $1, and I've heard great things about it, but it falls under the category of like adult epic fantasy, and I don't think that I have really read much in that area except for Game of Thrones. So yes, and it took me a while to read. So these do make me nervous. The first one is The Eye of the World by Robert Jordan. This is such a important fantasy series to the genre of fantasy. And this is a very long series. I believe it's 14 books. The last few books were written by Brandon Sanderson after Robert Jordan passed away. And I heard that these can be very, very dense. I heard that there's a middle part of the series that is a complete drag, but once you get past it, it's really good. I heard that there's lots of characters, like there's like 1,000 characters that the reader comes in contact with throughout the series. So it just makes me uber nervous to read this, but I'm also really excited because the SFF community really enjoys these books, and I really just want to appreciate this work in the same way that they have. I just need to carve out the time and just take it slow, because I am a person that likes to get things done, but I think that this is kind of a series that you have to slow burn and marathon. So yes, and they're all long, y'all. They're all so very, very long. So the length is another thing about it. The next one that I have is The Grace of Kings by Ken Liu, and I think that this one is a military fantasy, and I'm not sure. I'm just going off of the description that I've read. I think that there are some mythological elements involved, but I think that there is some aspect of military that is a part of this, and I don't think I've ever read a military fantasy at all, no matter what the target age group is. I'm pretty sure that I haven't read one, and this would be my first one. I heard that this is really good. I've seen people who have really enjoyed it, but once again, we're talking like adult fantasy here, which I have not read a lot of. Whether that's epic fantasy, high fantasy, or military fantasy, whatever. Adult fantasy, I have not read a lot of, and I did not notice that until recently when I was like, yeah, I enjoy fantasy, but a lot of the fantasy that I read is children's, middle grade, and YA, and I really have not stepped into the adult fantasy realm, and I know that it can be intense because there's a lot of world building, a lot of characters, a lot of explaining things that may be boring for a moment, but then again, I think that it is a genre to appreciate and enjoy, and I'm excited to pick this one up. Now, the last two that I have on this list are solely I think length. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that I am solely intimidated with these because the length is just ridiculous. So, and one I have attempted to read several times and it just hasn't happened. So the first one that I have is Les Mis by Victor Hugo, and I don't know how my copy got slightly damaged up here. Some of you probably, I don't know if you can see that, but this is a big boy. It may not look that big compared to some of the books that I've held up because I think the pages are thinner, but this book is easily 1,300 pages, okay? And it is a classic. I know a lot of people love Les Mis. I know a lot of people love the musical, any type of adaptations that have happened. I'm just so concerned that Les Mis is not going to be super accessible and that it's going to bore the hell out of me, and I have to figure out how to commit time to read this because I had a buddy read going for the Count of Monte Cristo and I completely failed it because I fell so far behind on that book, and I'm thinking like, dang, and the Count of Monte Cristo is super accessible, so I'm like, dang, if that's super accessible and I'm having a hard time keeping up, what if this is not super accessible and I just can't do it? But this is one that I just, in my lifetime, I need to read this one. But this is such a big book, and it is a lot of history, I think, about France, a lot of culture, and I have to prepare myself for that. So if you've read Les Mis, let me know whether it's accessible or not. And then the last one that I have on this list is War and Peace by Leo Tolstoy. I read Anna Karenina by Leo Tolstoy and I loved it. I really enjoyed it. I gave it 4 stars, I believe, when I read it. It was a few years ago that I read it, and I took my time with it and I enjoyed it. I have tried to read this on several different occasions. And I know that I've tried to read this several times because I still have my tabs at the top where I was marking which sections I needed to get to. I still have my bookmark in. I think that this is not going to be a fear for me in terms of accessibility and writing style because I've already read Leo Tolstoy before and I enjoy his writing style. I think that this is going to be a intimidation factor for me because of length. And Anna Karenina, I think for me, the copy that I own was just a little over 800 pages, whereas War and Peace is almost 1,300 pages as well. So, you know, reading a classic this long takes time and commitment, and I have to figure out strategically, like, how am I going to do this? Because if I enjoyed Anna Karenina, I think I might enjoy War and Peace. I mean, I'm not saying that they're the same by any means, but also Tolstoy likes to include a lot of characters in his books, and sometimes it could be kind of hard to keep up with the characters. Like when I read Anna Karenina, I had to take a lot of notes on it, and I feel like it's pretty much going to be the same in picking up War and Peace as well. All right, y'all, so that was 10 books, or just 10 things on my shelves that are super intimidating to me. I think that I probably have a couple other classics that kind of tutor that line of intimidation, but for the most part, a lot of those are just like things that I just haven't gotten to yet. But these are definitely books that I'm excited to read, but there is an intimidation factor there. But I think that I will feel so much better and much more accomplished if I ever do get through them. So I'm excited to pick them up. In the comments below, let me know some books that you're super intimidated by. I would love to hear about your books that are intimidating. I would also love to hear any comments that you have about the books that I listed. Like, have you read them? Did you enjoy them? Do you feel like they're accessible? Should I be intimidated? Let me know all that in the comments below. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. If you want to see more content from me, click the subscribe button. If you're interested in following me on social media or ways to support my channel, all of the links will be down in the description box below. As always, I hope you all have a wonderful day, and I'll be back with another video soon.